It's Friday, September 20th, and I'm your host, Paula Hersey. On today's show, it's the wild, wonderful world of animals. From oysters as a growing industry, goats helping to keep our waterways safe from herbicides, to turtle hatchlings getting a head start on life. Channel 18's Feel Good Friday episode of Barnstable Today has it all. Now for a look at municipal and legislative notes. In just 2 short weeks, the Cape Cod Rabies Task Force will be kicking off the fall round of oral rabies vaccination of wildlife in southeastern Massachusetts with the aim of preventing the reemergence of raccoon rabies on the Cape while reducing cases on the mainland. This map shows the bait zones and whether they will be baited by hand or bait station. The week of October 7th through the 11th, areas south and east of the canal will be baited and include approximately 19,000 baits that will be hand distributed from the Cape Cod Canal in Bourne through Route 151 in Falmouth, 28 in Mashpee, and 149 in Barnstable. Our award-winning Movers and Shuckers series is back. This season, learn how commercial oyster farmers are growing oysters faster than ever, helping to clean our waters and produce more delicious oysters for you.
My name is David Ryan. I'm the Director of Operations for Cape Cod Oyster Company. So over the past 10 or 15 years, our sole focus has been on oysters. The company has grown from 1 or 2 full-time employees to a team of about 12 people today. We were operating 52 weeks a year, trying to ship close to 100,000 oysters a week on ground that we farm ourselves.
Yeah, we're involved in every step of the process of cultivating oysters, from growing the seed and the floating upwellers to maintaining them throughout their growth stage and then harvesting them and getting them ready to ship out the door. We're involved in every aspect of it.
We started to have certain responsibilities allocated amongst the crew. So then I was responsible for tending to the seed, which is the juvenile oysters. What we do is we take large amounts of them when they come in. They're about the size of quinoa or maybe even a piece of sand. And we put them into a floating upwelling system, which we call a flopsifer sort. It's tanks in the water that pumps seawater, roughly about 300 gallons per hour into each of these little silos that are 3 by 3. So what we're doing is force feeding them the seawater and just making sure that these animals have plenty of food to grow.
So nitrogen is within all of our systems, all of our waterways, and our septic tanks actually put in a lot of nitrogen into the environment. Our plants and our algae do need nitrogen to grow, but our septic tanks put too much nitrogen into the water and overload it. And then what the oysters do is they're actually filtering the water, can filter over 50 gallons a day of seawater, and they're eating the algae, which is full of nitrogen in there. Basically act like a nitrogen sponge or a sieve. Hold onto it, and then when we harvest it and bring it out of the water, that's taking a huge amount of nitrogen out of the water and really helping our local waterways, helping both the recreational boaters, swimmers, as well as our local species as well. Other things like the marsh grass, the other shellfish in the area, all the fish, other commercial species. So it's really a huge, huge benefit to the environment.
There's actually numerous current studies that are taking place right now, and what they're trying to see is, do juvenile oysters remove a substantial amount of nitrogen? So if we do discover that they are removing a sufficient amount, then more towns will be more likely to open up nursery areas for other farmers to be able to have the upwellers and to introduce millions more of these animals to remove the nitrogen.
How does the Water Pollution Control Division control heavy vegetation at the fence line surrounding the facility without using herbicides? Channel 18 went off-road to meet the goats. Yes, goats who are making Barnstable go green.
Hoo, hoo, ma! That's our song when we go to people.
Yeah, we open the trailer, we people were all serious and whatnot. We're like, okay, are you guys ready? You got to help. And we always have people help us. It's fun. And then it's like, all right, and they don't expect it, but at the end, when we're about ready to, okay, the last thing you have to do is you have to sing, "Who let the goats out?" We do end up, we have a lot of fun. We do. And it's all about the goats, the goats, the goats. We're here because we're trying to maintain the fence line of the property without using herbicides, manpower. So we're using the goats on this particular job as one more tool to be able to offer in our efforts Cape-wide to not use herbicides. We did do a job for Hyannis water towers. We did that 2 years in a row. Around that water towers were a bunch of invasive plants, much like you see here, but they were covered more with poison ivy and that kind of thing. So, of course, being water, they couldn't use herbicides at all anyhow, and they never have. So this was another organic way to go in and clear up around the water towers so that they could get in there and work. We've got a total of 18 goats, and we separate them out into 3 herds. And they go out, and as you can see, this is an electric fence. We fence them in the electric fence, trailer them, and we send them out to work. We deploy them. All the jobs are different. They eat anything from grapevines to honeysuckle to bittersweet to tupela. They're on a job with a lot of tupela right now. Raspberries, any sort of overgrowth like that. Wild, invasive. Well, the invasives take over on the native plants and they choke them out. They're not supposed to be here. So what happens is our native plants, which are homes and habitats to animals, butterflies, things like that, pollinators, bees, aren't able to thrive. And when that happens, the ecosystem takes a shift. The goats actually are usually a lot less money than payroll. The goats don't make as much, and they work from sunrise to sunset. So you get a lot out of them in the course of a day. So you can utilize your employees to do other things that might have to happen. So in a job like this, it's kind of nice, right? They can go and they can get their paperwork done and they can do whatever they need to be doing, and saves on resources, saves on fossil fuel in the big machines, saves on noise pollution. That's an interesting question. I always loved goats. I love animals. I love nature. I love the environment. And my kids had grown up. So I decided that, well, why wouldn't you get some goats? I've always wanted them. So I did. And they were rescues. I spent a year researching what I could do with them to sustain them, and it was just a combination of many, many different things. So I went to training and decided, you know what, I think that we could use this on the Cape. Using goats is not new. Using goats they're one of mankind's oldest companions. They've been used for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years for doing this type of work. So all we were really doing is bringing things back around to simplifying, get it done, and let's not use herbicides when we don't have to.
Turtle TV is back for another season. While Channel 18 awaits the arrival of their new Head Start turtle, we bring back out of the archives the gathering of the turtles at Sandy Neck last fall. Natural Resource Officer Sean Cordes took Channel 18 out to the dunes of Sandy Neck ORV Trail to find the diamondback terrapin turtle hatchlings that just made their way into this world. Watch as Sean explains the dangers of leaving these wee ones out to fend for themselves and why the Head Start program is so important to the species. It's back to school for the Diamondback Terrapins. The Head Start program is in full swing out here in Sandy Neck. With me today, Natural Resource Officer Sean Cordes. Sean, we've got some babies.
We do, yeah. Yep, so this is always one of my favorite times of the year. It's in that stage of the program where a lot of these nests that were laid in June and July are finally starting to hatch out. So we're starting to see the small diamondback terrapin hatchlings in the wild make their way out to the marsh. And then we're also getting our first hatchlings for the Head Start program that we do here in the town of Barnstable. So we're out monitoring some of those nests today and getting them ready for the school year.
Right, so let's talk a little bit about this Head Start program and why it's necessary for these little turtles to really survive in the wild now.
Yeah, so the diamondback terrapin is a protected species in here in Massachusetts. It's listed as threatened. A couple of reasons for that. Historically, the diamondback terrapin was actually hunted for food for a period of time. Turtle soup was a delicacy back in the 19th century, early 20th century, and then habitat loss certainly had an impact on their populations as well. Salt marshes, like a lot of wetlands, have been destroyed and filled in over the years. So we have these few remaining populations here on Cape Cod, the one in the town of Barnstable being out here in the Barnstable Great Marsh, and they nest right here at Sandy Neck Beach. So because their populations are historically lower than they likely have been, it's that much harder for for them to be able to continue this process year after year. Terrapins generally survive by laying a lot of eggs, and a small fraction of those eggs will naturally make it to adulthood, but the percentage is only about 1 in every 100 eggs. We've faced a lot of issues here with predation on both nests and hatchlings, so this Head Start program is a good way to be able to combat some of that and get some of these turtles sort of bigger and stronger than they would be in the wild before we release them back out, which should bring that chance of survival up quite a bit.
Right, so they don't follow rules of the road or anything, so a lot of these are like literally in the middle of the trail where they'll lay their eggs. What happens when that is, like, vehicles are passing through this all the time?
Yeah, exactly. So the trails that these diamondback terrapins cross when they go from the marsh into the sand dunes where they nest is also made out of sand. So generally it's a hiking trail for most. There's only a few vehicles that can access these trails because there are small camps and cottages out here. But to a terrapin, that trail is no different than the sand dunes beyond it, and so it looks like a good nesting spot for them. So these nests that are laid in the trail would otherwise be run over if we weren't out monitoring them. What we're able to do is actually find those nests and carefully extract them and relocate them to a new, safer site. And we monitor those out, throughout the season until this time of year when they hatch out. And those are the turtles that we use for this Head Start program. And they will be, raised by schools and some other organizations throughout the season, so that we can release them out next season.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the Head Start program itself. So these turtles don't remain with you at the gatehouse. They go to schools and senior centers. And so tell us how that works.
Yeah, so once these nests have started hatching out, which we're seeing this week, we've had our first hatchlings sort of make it to that stage. We take care of them here at Sandy Neck until they get to the point where their yolk sac dries up. That's on the plastron, or that sort of underside of their shell, and that actually provides them with enough energy and nutrients to, in the wild, be able to make it out to the marsh or to make it to a nice spot in the sand dunes to be able to burrow down and sort of go into a type of hibernation, throughout the winter. So these particular turtles for our Head Start program aren't doing that. They're not going out to the marsh this winter, but we still have to wait for those yolk sacs to dry up before they can start eating on their own. So once that happens, they get transferred over to our main headquarters at MEA, and they're in small tanks there until the point where they're able to feed on their own. And from that point, we're able to distribute them out to schools, to libraries, all of these great programs that are part of the overall Head Start program. And they stay in those tanks throughout the winter time. And instead of in the wilds, they'd be hibernating, not doing much, not growing. They're in these tanks in warm water, they're eating lots of food every day, and they're growing big and strong. And generally throughout that 6 to 8 months, they're going to grow to be about the size of a 3-year-old turtle. So their shell's nice and strong and solid, and they're released right back out into the marsh. So a lot of those predators that would normally go after them when they're, you know, just a tiny little hatchling aren't going to have that opportunity. So it's been a really good system. We've seen it, you know, it's been pretty successful thus far. So we're excited for another year of it.
So tell me a little bit about what kids are learning when you put a turtle in a classroom, or even libraries or a senior center. What do people learn from this opportunity?
Yeah, well, it's a great program. They learn everything from just the anatomy of that animal, of a little turtle, to the ecology of the whole system here at Sandy Neck. So they're learning all about the resources here in the Great Marsh and the Barrier Beach, and they're also learning about what we can do to protect species in the world and here in our own backyard. So they are working with an endangered species and understanding that it's a fun process to be able to be a part of this program and watch them grow, but it's also really important for conservation efforts. You know, they are having a direct impact on restoring a population right here on Cape Cod. So this is one of those nests that's part of our Head Start program. As you can see, that's a bucketed nest, one that we relocated right from the marsh trail just off to our left-hand side here. And what I'll be doing now is pulling this cap off the top and checking to see where we're at with the hatching process. So we have a couple of hatchlings right here on the top, which is a good sign. So we'll be pulling this nest and bringing it back to the garage here at Sandy Neck to evaluate the rest of the hatching. But both of these individuals look nice and healthy. They're a good size, and if you look at the bottom, they still have a little bit of that yolk sac, but it is starting to dry up pretty nicely. So we'll probably have them for a couple of days before they go back to the office and start swimming around and hopefully feeding pretty soon here as well. So we can check real quick and just see where we're at with the rest of these eggs in here. So we have a few more in here as well. And it's interesting, you always have to be very careful at this point. You know, not only are the eggs delicate, but you'd be surprised at how soft the shells are on these hatchlings when they first come out. Even though they look, you know, sort of just like a miniature version of some of the adults, you know, they're still quite fragile at this point in time, which is why at this size, you know, predators can be such an issue. There's, you know, everything from birds to raccoons, and fox can sort of eat them whole. We'll take the whole nest back with us.
Oh, because now they're hatching out, so they've started the process.
So we'll put them on a heat lamp as the rest of them continue to incubate.
One.
But yeah, we gotta, it looks like most of them have already hatched. Sometimes it takes a while for them to either emerge out, and oftentimes too, you know, one of the other things that they can do in the wild is when they hatch out, they actually stay right there in the nest bowl and just wait until the spring to emerge and go out to the marsh.
Wow.
And again, that's you know, an adaptation to help combat the fact that there's so many predators. So if every single nest hatched out and went straight for the marsh, their chances of you know, even just a couple predators taking most of them out is high. So.
My goodness. Are they
Yep, there's
alive?
at least two. Yep, they're alive. So I'll I think they're enjoying it.
God.
But yep, they are ready to go. There's another one down below that.
Wow.
There's 5. You can see there's, you know, an egg in here too that's still unhatched. A couple of them.
Oh my goodness. Look at that. Oh my gosh. That's so cool.
Yeah, I'll see if I can show you guys that real quick. Yeah, there's one in here that's ready to hatch.
Is it like cracked?
Yep. Yeah, so the turtle's in there. It's you know, started to crack out of its shell, and you know, pretty soon it should be, you know, probably on its way up. So It's hard. It might be hard to see on the cameras, but I can show you on these animals. On the very tip of their nose when they're first born, you can see that little point.
Yeah.
That sharp point, so that's an egg tooth. A lot of reptiles have this, a lot of birds have this, and that's there to help them actually crack through that shell of their egg to start out with and emerge. So you also see that out here on, like the piping plovers and the least terns. They'll have those, and it'll go away after a period of time. So these same turtles, if they're the ones that, for example, stayed underground in the dunes over winter and they came out, that would be gone by the springtime. So you can tell that, they had hatched out in the fall and were just emerging.
Oh, no kidding. So cool.
Yeah. One of the things we have to be careful with when we do catch them at this point is there's potential that they could, if they don't hatch out of the egg fast enough, they can actually dry to that egg and get stuck, and it can pull the yolk sac out.
Off, yeah.
Which does happen in the wilds, but we definitely are mindful of that and careful to make sure that they get ample opportunity to not do that.
Up next, things to do, places to go, and people to meet. So many fantastic fall events to choose from this weekend. Here are two that are on our must-do list. Saturday, head over to Marston's Mills for the 90th anniversary Cape Cod Airfield fly-in from 10 to 3 p.m. www.capecodairfield.com for the day's activities. And Open Streets in Hyannis is back for the fall season with a wicked awesome lineup of music and family fun on Sunday from noon to 5 p.m. Come dance in the streets. www.hyannisopenstreets.com for the full schedule. Comments, suggestions, accolades, connect with us on Facebook, email us, or send us an old-fashioned note by carrier pigeon. Channel 18 works. For you, I'm Paula Hersey, and thank you for watching Barnstable Today.